The crown is yet to be placed, but the head may feel uneasy with the weight of this moment, one so long in the making and where the historical comparisons are apt. The last time an aged heir had to wait so long was Edward VII after Queen Victoria. It could be hard to follow in such historic footsteps. And unlike his then youthful mother, inheriting a nation ready to rebound after the war, Charles III's accession echoes his grandfather, George VI, who led a nation during a war in Europe that was causing economic hardship. So at a time of national difficulty, a king takes charge, as he also mourns his mother.
It's the moment I've been dreading, as I know a lot of people have, but try and keep everything going.
Absolutely.
Come.
One of the first challenges for Charles, so long in the public eye, is to shed his political baggage. In 2015, a series of memos were released which showed the then prince having lobbied the Blair government on matters ranging from the Iraq War to the culling of badgers. That doesn't adhere to the separation of crown and politics, the cornerstone of a constitutional monarchy, and Charles obliquely noted such.
My life will of course change as I take up my new responsibilities. It will no longer be possible for me to give so much of my time and energies to the charities and issues for which I care so deeply.
Keeping his own counsel may prove easier than managing the Commonwealth that was defined by his mother. Imperial retreat refashioned into a family of nations. The Queen, though, still at its head. In Rwanda, at the meeting of the Commonwealth this year, he stood in for his mother. And it's these former colonies of the Crown that now wait to see how he defines this role.
I cannot describe the depths of my personal sorrow at the suffering of so many, as I continue to deepen my own understanding of slavery's enduring impact.
In June, he acknowledged that he must accept the past to retain the Commonwealth. But while he can offer continuity and renewal, youth he cannot. The institution needs relevance for a new era, hence his instant decision to make William the Prince of Wales.
With Catherine beside him, our new Prince and Princess of Wales will, I know, continue to inspire and lead our national conversations, helping to bring the marginal to the centre ground, where vital help can be given.
For his mother, married for over 70 years, stability and service was at the heart of her life and reign. King Charles has Camilla, his queen consort, a royal title she earned after past years of difficulty and at times unpopularity. Charles is now the head of the firm, and he knows he must rise above the divisions like his mother did.
I want also to express my love for Harry and Meghan as they continue to build their lives overseas.
These are new questions for a king who, like his mother, came of age in the era of modern mass media. But he now inherits an ancient role so embedded in society that when a man of 73 walks the lines of a palace, he is kissed and clamoured for by 21st century citizens. The crown is about continuity. The question is what character Charles brings.
Well, the King's commitment to the environment, of course, is well known, but how much will his new role curtail his ability to advocate for a cause so close to his heart? I'm joined now by the environmentalist Jonathan Porritt, who was a personal advisor to Charles when he was the Prince of Wales. Thanks very much for joining me, Mr. Porritt. I just want to ask you, first of all, as someone who worked very closely with him, who would consider himself a friend of the new King, what does it mean to you watching him be proclaimed as king today?
It is extraordinary. It's difficult thinking of him as King Charles III, having spent all the last 20, 30 years thinking of him as the Prince of Wales and working with him as an advisor on environmental issues. It's a huge change, and he couldn't have made it clearer in his first speech as King Charles III that he recognized how big a change that was and how much of a difference that was going to make to him in terms of his new responsibilities.
Absolutely. And in that speech, he said, I won't be able to give time and energy to causes I care about. What does that mean for the environment, for his dedication to the environment?
Yes, was very clear, wasn't it? In fact, it couldn't really have been clearer. It reminded me of someone saying, that used to be my old job and this is now my new job. So goodbye and thanks for all the fish, as it were. I've got a new set of massive responsibilities. That means I cannot possibly do things in the same way I did as Prince of Wales. Now, I don't honestly think that any of the organizations, charities, think tanks that he's worked with over the last 20, 30 years on environmental issues are going to see that as an inappropriate response to his new situation. He's clearly got now to do things very different. The last thing he will want is to risk some kind of constitutional crisis in terms of falling out over policy on climate change or farming or whatever it might be. That just wouldn't be anywhere in his view of how best to interpret his new role. And I think everybody in the environment movement globally will understand that he is still an absolutely committed champion of everything to do with creating a better world through a better environment, but that he's going to have to mediate that differently. You'll have to think about it differently.
And that's what I'm interested in terms of practically. Sorry to cut across you there, but practically, no. I suppose, we know he was due to host a meeting with environmentalists just before his mother, the Queen, died. Is that something he would be able to do now? Should he be able to continue to do that?
No. I think that's a classic example of what he won't be able to do. So this was a gathering of senior people to talk about the forthcoming big climate conference at the end of the year. It included John Kerry, a very experienced, eminent spokesperson on environmental issues for Joe Biden, President Biden. To bring together a group of people like that as king would be impossible. So he may still be able to use his convening power in different ways, but it certainly wouldn't look like that. He will, of course, still be dealing with a lot of heads of state. He still will have his weekly meeting with whoever happens to be the prime minister at any time. He will still be feeling as passionately about these things as he has done for the last 50 years. So he's not going to keep silent when it can discreetly be done, when he can talk to people on the basis of complete trust about some of his continuing views.
And it's interesting, isn't it? You mentioned 50 years. It is incredible to think and worth remembering today. It has been more than 50 years since he warned about pollution, about toxic substances seeping into the seas and the rivers. And people said, in his own words, he was dotty. Was he dotty, or was he a man well ahead of his time on this?
I think we now know, if you consider the state of the environment and so many of the crises that we're facing now, I think we know that he was way ahead of his time. And as director of Friends of the Earth back in the 1980s, working with him then as an advisor, there were lots of complicated, controversial issues that he felt it was useful for him to address and to make some contribution on. And yes, a lot of people found it very easy to dismiss that out of hand. But over the years, bit by bit, people came to recognize that these were mainstream things that needed to be given far greater attention than was happening through conventional political processes. And I think now everybody recognizes that he was indeed a voice speaking out ahead of the rest of people's understanding of these issues.
And I just want to ask you very briefly, finally, he has prepared for this role his whole life. He may even at times have thought it would never come. As a friend of his, what do you think is going through his mind now? Is it even possible that there are nerves, there's apprehension?
It's almost impossible to imagine a longer apprenticeship, isn't it? I don't think there was any doubt ever in his mind, by the way, that as long as he remained in good health, that this was a moment that would come, and certainly he dreaded it, as he said, because of the loss of the late Queen, the loss of his mother. But this is something he has been preparing for actively, not just passively thinking, well, this is something down the track, as it were, but actively thinking about how to carry out these new responsibilities. And all I know from an environmental perspective is that the beliefs, the values, the deep spiritual insights, the wisdom and experience of that long apprenticeship will serve him well in this new role. It will be done differently, but he's calling on an incredible wealth of knowledge, experience, compassion, and insight. So for all of us, that has to be a good thing when we think about the challenges ahead and the need for such a profound reconciliation between ourselves and this world on which we live.
Jonathan Porritt, thank you very much for talking to us today. Thank you. Jonathan Porritt there. Well, our North of England correspondent Claire Fallon has been in Leeds speaking to some members of Britain's Caribbean community, asking for their reflections on the death of the Queen and whether feelings towards the monarchy might change under the new king.
Yes, and I was born in Montego Bay.
Home is Leeds, but also it's Jamaica. And Dorothy Stewart has been a nurse, a university lecturer and a Church of England priest in the 6 decades since she moved to the UK with her parents. The Queen has been a constant in her life until this week.
I was in the kitchen at the time, so I didn't hear it, and my phone rang, and it was one of the executive members, and she was in absolutely flood of tears, and she says, it's been announced, the Queen's passed, and there's an awful sense of being bereft. Great loss, great loss. She was just so much to so many people.
But also different things to different people, not least in places where the end of one reign may be seen as a moment to look at a more fundamental change.
Jamaica, like some of the larger Caribbean islands, they're feeling that they've come of age. They're not children anymore, so they just don't need as much direction, and they feel they have the ability to make all their own decisions. So I think Barbados has been the first one that stepped back from that. And in the future, I think others, the larger islands, will take the same path.
A new start of another kind at the rehearsal studios where we found the first members of Reggae Roots, a youth choir set up by Sheila Howarth.
Do you almost see her as being a bit of a feminist icon in a way?
Man, the girl was a rebel. She did what she wanted to do. Some of my friends are saying, oh, they feel sorry, the Queen is dead. Some of them saying that she should give back to the black community, the African community, the Asian community, what the British had stolen from them. And some people are saying that they're not bothered. But you've got to separate the both. She's a woman who has died. I mean, yes, I shed a tear. I'm not a royalist, but it hurt me to say that all what she's done, she was given that role as Queen of England. And she took that role on, 100%.
King Charles has been there learning from her knees. So I think the whole nation is praying that he will just pick up the mantle.
Do you think he'll do a good job of it?
He will give it his best. I'm sure he will. I'm sure he will. Yes, I'm sure he will. We're moving into a new era. All my life I've had a queen, and now I have a king.
Now, it has just been confirmed that the Queen's funeral will take place on Monday, September the 19th at 11 a.m. And it's also been confirmed that the Queen will lie in state for 4 clear days at Westminster Hall.